John, you're not in the basement? In the garage?
We're live.
Live.
When my camera goes off, I'll be in the basement.
All right. So we're going to call the meeting to order. So roll call. Tom Keegan.
Here.
Dean Roberts.
President.
John Kides.
President.
George Theodorides is not here. And George Sirenides is
Present.
here. And I am here as well. All right. So we're going to move to approval of the February 10th, 2021 minutes. Somebody move the,
Motion to approve.
all right. All in favor? Opposed, abstentions. Great. Is there anyone on the public participation?
No, there is not.
Thank you. There's no old business. We will move on to new business. So for 5 new business, authorize the Mayor Harry W. Rilling to execute the HGAC by interlock contract for the City of Norwalk to participate in the Houston-Galveston Area Council Cooperative Purchasing Program. The agreement allows the city to purchase products and services that have been contracted after having been subjected to either competitive bid, IFB, or competitive proposal, RFP process. I'll move the item.
So moved.
Who was that, Tom? Okay. Nick, you want to speak to it a little bit?
Yeah, so the HGAC is a typical cooperative program that municipal governments have access to purchase equipment and supplies from vendors that have gone through a competitive bid process. We're particularly interested in having an agreement with the HGAC because you'll see on the second item, we were researching buying a beach cleaner. And this was one of the cooperative agreements that were in place for that. But we decided to utilize a sole source method instead because of the timing. We'd like to get the machine in as quickly as possible before the beach season to be able to till and clean the beach. But in having the purchasing agent research the agreement, she's called around to several departments within Connecticut and realized that there's a number of municipalities here in Connecticut that also have an agreement in place with the HGAC. There's vendors including CN Wood, which we use to purchase additional vehicles through DPW. So she thought it was a pretty good idea to still move ahead with the agreement and authorization to enter into this contract with the HGAC. So that's why we're doing it, in case we need a bigger list of vendors that we can tap into for state prices that have already been competitively bidded without utilizing a sole source method. So that's the reason why we wanted to move forward with this agreement.
You're on mute, Darlene.
Any questions? Nope. So all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions? George, are you with us?
Yes, I am. I'm in
Okay.
favor. Aye.
So we're moving on to 5.2. Authorize a purchasing agent to issue a purchase via sole source order to Caspar All-Terrain Vehicles, Inc. for the purchase of one Charrington Model 5500 beach cleaner for a sum not to exceed $124,010. Count numbers noted. Approved through the fiscal year 2021 capital fleece purchase. Someone want to move the item? Thank you, John. Go ahead, Nick.
Yep, so this was one of the items you requested in the capital fleet budget in fiscal year 2021. So this is the actual purchase of that piece of equipment. The beach cleaner replaces a more than 20-year-old pull behind beach cleaner that we have down at the beach. Typically we run it with a tractor, and then we attach the actual cleaner behind it, and it tills the beach to remove debris or any type of material within the sand. This sole source purchase for the Sherrington model is actually a closed cab one piece. So instead of having a tractor pulling a piece of equipment behind it, this is an all-encompassing one vehicle, one driver operated. So it reduces the need to have a tractor plus a pull behind. It's one piece. It's the only one on the market. We wanted to go ahead and purchase it via the sole source method because of the timing. Like I said before, this is also available through that cooperative agreement. But in having the contract drafted and then purchasing it and then the lead time, it wouldn't have been here in time for us to start the beach season. So we're utilizing the sole source method instead. And we are actually getting the same price through the vendor via the sole source that we would getting through on the cooperative agreement. So that's why we feel comfortable in using this method, and the purchasing agent has signed off on that process as well.
Nick, what do they do with the old equipment? You know?
So we'll still have it on hand and it'll still be functional until it breaks down. That piece of equipment is, like I said, over 20 years old. So it's not really like we're going to farm it out and use it for replacement parts, but we'll use it until it completely is no longer functional as a backup. And then we'll have the new one as well.
Nick, is the new one going to last us another 20 years for the city, or?
I think the life expectancy on it is 12 years. There's photos in there. One of the benefits of it is the replacement parts for it are readily accessible. They're through a company in Georgia, even though the machine is built in Germany, I believe.
Okay.
But it's maintenance free. A lot of the racks are easily reachable, detachable, replaceable. So we think maintenance wise, it'll also hold up a little bit better in the long run as well.
Any more questions? Okay. So all in favor? Aye. Abstentions? Opposed? Thank you. So that passes.
I'm an aye
as well.
too.
So. Oh, thank you. Okay. All right. So that's it for our agenda. So I'm sorry?
No, I was going to say the agenda is pretty short because we are still processing special event permits requests. We've processed everything that we had pending or were being proposed to be rolled over from last year through April, May, and June. We reached out to some of the local and annual programs and events that we typically host as well. Pride is not doing their big event this year. The Arts Festival, we're unsure whether or not they're going to do their event. So we're reaching out to a lot of the event and organizers that we typically would host through May, June, through April, May, and June, but they are not either comfortable because of the restrictions or because of the requirements under COVID. But I think that once the new guidelines are announced on March 19th by the governor, I think we'll see an increase in the events. And I think by next month, you'll see much more events on the agenda as well.
Nick, so knowing that Pride canceled, can they double back? Understanding that.
Yeah, we just asked that they have, that they give us 45 days notice, because depending on when the Park and Rec committees and the Common Council meetings fall, it requires a contract to be drafted. So we generally ask for large events like that to give us 45 days in notice. But we've already reached out to them. They've said that they're going to, doing smaller events instead of doing a large event this year. And I think a lot of people are going to follow that type of planning, because even though the restrictions are being lifted and even though the infection rates are down, I think a lot of people are still concerned about having big crowds and gatherings. And I think they may be more cautious this summer. I mean, even us, where we're planning to have, our concerts and things like that, but we're investigating, moving it to an alternative location to be able to control capacity. We're looking to scale down, things like July 4th, possibly, moving it in another location. So there's all types of, planning that are going on to be able to try to reduce capacity And it's kind of difficult because we don't know where we're going to be in 2 or 3 months from now. But we know that some type of restrictions are going to be in place. But we're trying to take those measures in hand. And I think a lot of organizers are doing the same thing. And I think that's why it's going to be a little bit of a slow process until the weather really turns.
Thanks, Nick. You want to just mention the meeting we had with the Seaport
Yes.
Association?
So we also met with the Seaport Association because they are still, they have proposed to do the light show again this year. So, learning from last year's experience, we really wanted to meet internally with the Seaport Association along with the department heads. Typically, every department that signs off on the special event permit, departments like TNP, FD, PD, risk management, all those types of, all those entities that sign off typically in a special event permit. We met with the Seaport Association. We discussed what was being proposed and what recommendation or concerns we had by city staff. They followed up yesterday and I responded and I asked them again to sort of reconsider some of the things, which included things like putting a cap on the number of attendees at the show. I think originally their thinking was, being able to try to facilitate as many people as possible on any given night. But when you do that, it makes planning and logistics a nightmare because you don't know what you're going to get because there's so many variables. So we've asked them to look at, a projected cap per night. We've asked them to look at eliminating selling tickets at the gate because that's going to cause more time and more traffic. We've asked them to look at selling tickets with designated times of entry, so that way everyone doesn't show up at the same time. I think we've asked them to advise or make aware the East Norwalk Association because this is going to have a direct impact on their community. And lastly, we've asked them to detail a traffic management plan to include more information. So, how many and where are you going to place VMS boards with electronic road signage? Where are you going to stage your operations center? How many volunteers you're going to have? Those were the type of small details that we need. And like I mentioned to the Seaport Association, if you have that information, it makes planning your event logistically much easier. It's difficult to have a first year event, not know what you're expecting, and then try to think of all of the aspects of that event. So, by having some of these limitations, it'll help their planning. We asked them to sort of look at those recommendations and then come back and see what's doable. I mean, they may come back and say, if we decide to have a cap of, let's say, 1,500 cars or 2,000 cars per night, it may not financially make sense because they're having to pay the company to put on the light show. So we're going to wait for them to sort of come back with their proposal and more details, and then based on that, we can make a recommendation to the council members of how and if it's going to work.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
John? John?
Thank you. I came late to that meeting. I mean, how aware are they of their costs as far as the city's concerned? Because, does there need to be a constant police presence? Do they have a rough idea about, what their overhead's going to be?
So by having some of those caps, we can determine what the cost is, right? Because now if we say, hey, you're going to be able to serve a max of 2,000 cars, then we can figure out logistically based on how long it takes to get through the show. If you have designated time, how many cars do you let in a certain time? You can figure out traffic flow, figure out volunteers, you can figure out security. So, I think a lot of it's going to really depend on what they agree to. That'll really set the expenses. And that's what I was trying to show them is, hey, the more you refine this and the more you narrow it down, the better idea of budgeting you have for it. Jimmy was there on the call as well. And I'm not sure if you heard him, but he went to Wallingford and, they were having 2,000 cars or 3,000 cars on a Saturday night. Meanwhile, ours was projected to have 450 on a weekend and 250 during the week. That's a totally different show of what they are expecting. And considering our location and vicinity to New York City, I think we're going to get more people than you would at Wallingford. So, considering all those things, I think if you refine it and you have a better idea of what you're going to get on a given night, that'll help them plan, and that'll really give them the finances of what's going to work and not work. Because that way I can go to Jimmy and I can say, look, you have 2,000 cars per night. How are you going to work this? How many officers do you need? And those types of things.
Seems like, everyone's going to be in their cars, so the police presence would logically, I would think it would be more for traffic.
Traffic.
Yep.
Yep, I agree. But
Tommy,
I think it was a good conversation though, because
It was.
they went back, they updated their Q&As. We were able just to go through the Q&A sheet, things that stuck out, things that we felt that wouldn't work. There were changes from last year's proposal. There were things in there, this year of, well, we're going to allow people to stop and get out and go into Ripka's Cafe. Well, we don't recommend that, because now you're messing with the traffic configuration and pattern within the park. So, I mean, it was a good conversation to have with them. And like I told them, it's not that we're trying to deter their event, but the more refined and the more tighter you have the plan, the better it is for the city. And it's better for them as far as planning and the expenses.
when do you see it coming before this committee for approval?
It depends on whether or not they're going to follow or abide by some of the recommendations that we had, honestly. But again, it's really going to be, where's the break even point for them financially, right? So it has to make financial sense for them. And I think logistically, it has to make sense for the city. Considering all the traffic too, with the walk bridge program and things like that, considering the time to emergency response, not just to an incident on the park, but what if someone has a heart attack and now there's traffic and the EMS can't get to that street? So, I think having everyone in the room and having those discussions made people realize, yeah, there's some things that we have to work out.
I guess the conversation on if they still owe the city money for the Oyster Festival might be better suited for that meeting where that item's up for a vote.
And one of the things that, that hasn't been brought to the table is what is the city and what is the Parks Department get out of this? And, and it's not about a financial gain, but, obviously, this is an event that spans 42 days at one of our, busiest parks. And I get it. It's in the winter where you think it's a downtime, but I've been at that park all year long, even after a large winter snowfall. People are out there wanting to see the water, wanting to walk the park. So, it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I'm glad we got this much time to plan it, so make sure when it does happen, it's as streamlined as possible.
Yeah. And I want to say there is a way to do the event and make it successful. It's just whether or not they're going to scale it down or scale it back enough to do so, and whether or not financially it makes sense. I don't know what the event management company charges, but the places and the location that the Seaport mentioned, those are large stadium arena parking lots. This is not something that's typically done in a smaller municipality or residential neighborhood. So I don't know what the cost is. And I think that's one of the things that they're trying to figure out. Whether or not the city gives them permission, they'll then go to the vendors and see what the cost is, right? So it's almost like a catch-22. They need to get permission before they get a contract. And we want to figure out, all the details of how that vendor is going to do things. So I think it was good to actually have the conversation, have those guidelines and recommendations. They can take that to the event organizer. They can say, hey, can you do this? What's that break even point, and see if it makes sense for them.
Thanks, Darlene. Thanks, Nick, for putting that meeting together and working on this.
All right. So Nick, do you want to talk about just briefly, when is the sports programming meeting?
So we
I got something that was canceled. You pushed it back, right?
Yes. When we scheduled the meeting, didn't realize that it was falling on the same night and time as the Common Council. So we pushed it back to next week. And it actually works out better because there'll be new guidelines in place on the 19th. But I think we have a preliminary look at it. So we're going to have a discussion with the teams, let them know basically what the protocols are in regards to scheduling games, locations, all those types of things. We're still working through some challenges as well. We have, some sites under construction like West Rocks, plus we also have vaccines going on at Vets Park. So, I mean, there's some things that we need to figure out a game plan for. Plus, we also just finished February where we got 27 inches of snow. So, of course, our guys are now getting the fields back together. But the first day the weather turns, everyone wants to get out there. So we want to get everyone together next week, go over what the protocols are with regards to field permits and game schedules, and all those types of things, and also mention what our priority is. Some of the same things we talked about last time, as far as the priority of who gets field and those types of things. The 5 categories we had with the schools and the park programs and the programming partners and the adult leagues, and then the for-profits for last, and just give them an insight that, hey, we're revamping some of these things. We have new staff in place. We're going to go out. We're going to verify, your rosters match what you're submitting. So we want to just touch base on all of those things as we go into the season, just to let them know where we're going in the long run.
Great. All right. If that's it,
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn, someone? Tom, Keegan? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you. We stretched
Thank
it out
you.
to 22 minutes. Thank you. Thank you,
Have a
Delene.
good night.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Denise.
Have a good night.